This is Anish Chauhan and this is Equilibrium Security. It's time to tackle your biggest cyber security challenges head on. So welcome everybody to episode 20 of our podcast, of our Cyber Hot Seat podcast. This time I am really pleased to say we've got another great resource and a really great subject for you. So today's episode is called When the Alarms Sound, Practicing Your Cyber Response. Now, hopefully this is going to be a really engaging conversation because maybe practicing cyber response isn't something you're doing already, or it's something you're doing but perhaps not doing it to the degree that you think you should be doing that. So in order to answer this question a lot better than I can and go into a lot more detail than I can, I've got Jonathan Ellwood from IASME, and Jonathan is Head of Cyber Incident Exercising and Response at IASME. So hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Anish. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I think we just spoke briefly before and we said you have the record of having the longest job title that was able to fit on a certificate. Is that correct?
That's correct. I've actually got a certificate for having the longest job title in cybersecurity, right. And I've actually got the widest job business cards than anybody else.
It was like an extra wide
business cards.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, fantastic. So cyber incident exercising is something that is gaining a lot more awareness, traction, relevance to businesses. You know, every time we record one of these sessions, there's another breach that's happened, another headline breach. Yeah, they're obviously happening all the time. So why? You know, it's mapped, isn't it, to the NCSC's cyber incident exercises standard. But why should maybe small or mid-sized businesses care about it?
Yeah. I a cyber event can happen to anybody. It's cyber criminals, if they don't care, they're just trying to door locks and seeing where they can get in. So it can happen to an SME as well as, some of the bigger ones that are hitting the headlines.
Absolutely.
And just, this past week, we've seen the annual review come out from the NCSC.
Yes.
The overall messaging there, it's time to act. And part of that act is, thinking about what you're going to do. If the alarm goes off, something happens, what are you going to do? And what's your response plan?
Yeah.
And the response plan is only ever going to be as good as to how well it's been thought out for that scenario, really.
And you've made a really good point there. You've made which kind of talks to the title of this episode, which is when the alarm goes off. So there's a bit of an analogy there, isn't there? So it's all very good having a plan and knowing what to do in the hypothetical scenario that something happens, but what are you going to do when the alarm actually goes off? So some organizations might think, well, we already have a cyber response plan. It's written down. It's been signed off. We know what to do. Do we need to actually exercise it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Businesses by definition change all the time. Tech is changing. You're bringing in new tech. You might be bringing in AI. You're bringing in your staff change all the time, and so much of that response plan does come down to the people, and so it's so important to do that on a regular basis. The NCSC said you should, as a minimum, do an annual exercise. And I think that's just about enough, really, because businesses change all the time.
A year is a lifetime for some businesses, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So for those listeners that don't know what a cyber incident exercise is, what does it look like in practice?
Yeah. In practice, it's a scalable thing, depending on the maturity of the organization, really. For some organizations, as a brand new concept, you're probably just starting out fairly simply. The NCSC have got a really good resource called Exercise in a Box.
Okay.
So that's got some, pre-prescribed exercises that you can run, just little micro exercises. So that's a really good place to start.
And those are available on the NCSC website, are they?
That's available on the NCSC website.
Yep.
So as SME, anybody can download one of those and just use that maybe half an hour just to start the process. But then you can go all the way through to exercises that last days and quite intense things. but that might, depends on the size of the organization. It just depends on the number of staff, depends on the digital complexity of the organization.
Complexity. Yeah, I was just going to
Yeah,
say. Yeah.
yeah,
And so maybe for that, because some people think about, that we do see more organizations carrying out a tabletop simulation, tabletop activity. And that might be, well, what are we going to do in this situation? Do we need to contact somebody? Do we need to do we even need to get marketing and PR know? Do we need to understand who we're going to approach? Do we need to report it? Just pick out, if you don't mind, pick out a couple of useful nuggets of things that from your perspective, businesses are maybe not considering or
yeah.
maybe overlooking in these scenarios.
Exercising is a really good way to get buy-in from the board. I
Mm-hmm.
think entrepreneurs by nature are risk takers.
Yeah.
So, maybe they're not necessarily thinking in terms of, well, this could actually happen to me. So an
Yeah.
exercise kind of, starting at board level can really start to get that top-down buy-in
Yes. Yeah.
as well. But you should really be, thinking about all parts of the business, so that
Mm-hmm.
whether that's your stakeholders, your supply chain, your customers, but also your staff. I mean, the headlines this year have been horrendous,
They have. Yeah.
and who's not affected when
Mm.
when something big happens. So you need
Yeah.
to really think about all parts of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a cyber incident exercising facilitated training course, which we've run a few times. We developed that for the Scottish government, and
Okay.
we've run that a few times. And we ran it for the ICO as well, actually, and they brought in lots of different departments
Yeah.
because it looks like it looks and feels differently for each department.
Yeah.
And that really helps develop the response plan by doing
Mm.
that.
Okay. And what about um how do they differ from sort of those live play exercises? So because what's going to be relevant for one of these big organizations who carry out, got huge a big board, they've got PR people, they've got a big cyber incident response team inside the organization. What about how do they differ to a live play exercise, and how does it differ for an SME basically? Because you said you
Yeah,
made that distinction there between entrepreneurs being very they can tolerate a lot of risk, right? Because that's what they do. But that presence won't be there in the big enterprises. So what makes sense for an SME in
yeah,
an activity
yeah,
like this?
yeah. I think there's this distinction between tabletop exercises and live
Mm.
play exercises, and
Yeah.
um, um, if you're lucky, you've heard of tabletop exercises. Not
Hmm.
everybody's heard of live play.
Sure.
And I think a really good analogy there is to take the fire drill. Everybody's familiar with the fire drill.
Yeah.
Wherever you go, you see fire extinguishers, you see fire exits, etc., etc. And you know if that the alarm goes off,
You know what to do.
then you know what to do.
Yeah.
So just taking it back to our cyber incident exercising. So if you all assemble around a table and you're talking about what would we do if the fire alarm went off, and you'd
Hmm.
say, oh yeah, well, we would calmly leave the building, we would grab the register, and we would all assemble in the nearest car park, pub,
Yeah.
bus shelter, whatever it is you've elected to do.
Yeah.
So you're just talking through the scenario.
Hmm.
Whereas live play, the alarm is actually going off, the
Hmm.
fire marshals are putting on their jackets, they're grabbing the registers,
Yeah.
everybody is actually leaving the building,
Hmm.
and you're pretending and acting as if it is the real thing.
Yes.
Maybe you're taking your register, and maybe it's a pre-thought out thing where somebody is actually on the register, but they're not
Mm.
allocated, they're not accounted for, and they're still in the building. What
Yeah.
do you do?
Yeah.
So that's the difference. For live play, you need to have an organization that is of a good maturity in their response planning.
Yes, and that's not necessarily linked to size, is it? Because I think that's one thing that organizations overlook. They're like, well, we're only a 30 user organization, or we're only something. We don't have that resource, but it is more about cyber maturity, isn't it, rather
Yeah.
than size? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah. So small organizations can do live play. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Maybe their IT infrastructure is being managed and maintained by an
Hmm.
MSP.
Yeah.
So live play in that scenario would be, well, okay, we've lost access to all of our digital
Hmm.
day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
How do we go about engaging with our MSP? Do we phone them up? Do we create tickets?
Hmm.
Okay, well, it's live play. Go and do it. How well
Yeah.
prepared are they to actually go and do
To
this for
respond,
real?
absolutely, yeah, because it's
Yeah,
very easy to. And look, this we see this in enterprises through to SMEs, that there's a degree of, I don't know if the term is right, but almost burying your head in the sand and hoping for the best, because you're
yeah,
thinking, well, we do have this organization and we do pay them a lot of money and they will respond. So the question is like, okay, well, let's test it then.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You bought the marketing, but in reality, how is it actually going to
How
go
is it?
down? Um,
Yeah.
and you can have some really critical, important things in your day-to-day digital world.
Hmm.
And you really need to think about, well, actually, if this went down, this would be catastrophic for our business. And therefore you should run
Yes.
an exercise and bring that person or that entity into your exercise,
Hmm.
bring that
That's
MSP
right.
into your exercise
Yeah.
so that, you know, they understand you, you understand
Hmm.
them, you've pre-thought out all of the comms of
Yeah.
and maybe that's you might be making a claim on your cyber insurance,
Hmm.
or you
Or at
might
least phoning
be.
them up and starting to see what the process is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. It
Yeah.
could be, really, um it's really worth telling the NCSE if you're having a cyber incident. If it turns out you've got a really serious cyber incident, you talk to the NCSE. They
Yeah.
might know, they might know something.
Yes, yeah, that's really good, really good. And so, if we link it back to your analogy before, sometimes we've seen in physical buildings, haven't we? Maybe in schools or colleges or university, whatever, that when a live play, to use your fire example, when that's not, if that institution has an automatic link because there's thousands of people in the building to the fire service, the fire service actually come out, don't they, and they're saying, okay, someone sounded the alarm, we think there's a fire. Is the fire service going to actually come, and how long will it take them? So you even see that simulation. So it's doing that as well, isn't it, really, to align with that analogy that you're referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's two NCSE schemes, one for cyber incident exercising. There's actually one for cyber incident response as well.
Okay, yeah.
So if
Ah,
you think about that, you could actually have a responder on call
okay.
who
Yes.
you've got a relationship with already, who
Yes.
say, well, that's our fire engine that's going to come when we're in trouble. You know.
Correct. Yeah. So so that's an important distinction, isn't it? So you can do cyber incident exercising and the response, but those are kind of, treated slightly separately.
Yeah, they're
Mm.
they're separate schemes.
Yes.
Um, that there are providers who happen to do both schemes
Hmm.
because that kind of works. If you're a response company, you really
Mm.
understand what the reality is like, and therefore you're
Yes.
probably quite good at exercising as well.
Because you
So
have to do it on a regular basis, well, hopefully not too regular, but on a regular basis in the real world.
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
getting your local fire brigade to come and run and
That's right. Yeah.
test
Yeah.
test it with you. Yeah.
So in that scenario, you're kind of describing it to be a reasonably lengthy exercise. So how long does something like this take? So sometimes a tabletop activity can be like an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Typically, how long would something like this take?
Well, for an SME, if it's a first time exercising,
Mm.
probably half an hour to an hour just to get going for the
So
first
that's
time.
so
Never
that's
tested
really
their response plan. Then, yeah, a short exercise
that's
to
really
start.
that's really good to know, isn't it, Ken, for a lot of organizations, because some people listening to this might think, okay, well, we are a small-ish organization. What we do is very important. If this thing happened to us, it would be a catastrophe. However, we're all very busy. No one has time to allocate a day to doing this activity. So the fact that you're saying it's an hour, 30 minutes even, that should hopefully be palatable, right? For
Yeah, if
yeah.
if it, if it's the first time you've never done it,
Mm,
just get and introduce the subject matter and
yeah.
start to think in those sorts of terms. The 2025 data breaches survey showed that
Hmm.
only 23% of businesses had a response plan. That's
Oh, even
really
a
low.
plan. Yeah.
Yeah, so nearly 75, well, probably over 75% of businesses have no idea what they would do for a cyber event.
Yeah.
And the reality of, today's society, you're more likely to get that than you probably would a fire.
A
So,
fire,
but you
absolutely.
have
Yeah.
that.
You have that. Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's a really good, really good analogy to continue to draw to. So what about resources? So we talked briefly about how long it takes. How yeah, who do you need to run a cyber incident exercise? Do they need to be technical? Do they need to be non-technical? Do they need to be a mixture of the two? What's an ideal makeup of people?
I think it all depends on that particular organization and the
Yeah.
maturity of that organization.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
probably the first few, you're getting that top down buy-in. Um, a lot of people think, well, cybersecurity, that's IT. Well, no, it's not. There's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah.
And because it is such a big subject matter, you probably need to break it down and do different kinds of exercises at different times to try and involve all the right departments. If you're, I don't know, if you're, it really depends. It's so much of it needs to be tailored to the organization and appropriate for that organization. I keep using the fire drill analogy, but are you a nursing home where all the patients smoke in bed at night, or 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 are you a hairdresser? So it's got the exercise needs to be proportionate and that's fundamentally why the NCSC have this scheme, because you've got expert we are assuring experts in the subject matter who can design something that is appropriate to the organization that's in front of them, really.
Yeah, so I guess the key is it's not going to be technical. It's not just going to be technical, because you're going to have other people that are going to have to respond to this situation, right, that aren't going to be technical. So yeah, that's really good to know.
Correct. Yeah. So some organizations specifically say, right, we want to have an exercise where we are practicing our comms. What do we tell the staff whilst this is all going down? What do we tell the customers? At what point do we bring in, notify the ICO? The National Crime Agency? There's so many, and that's just comms in itself. So it's it can be a big subject to consider. But if you're a victim of cybercrime, it's a really, really stressful situation, and so much of it can be pre-planned out, pre-thought about before it happens, so that you're not then trying to make those really, high stakes decisions
off the top of your head or in the heat
of
the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you're more likely to make a mistake. So
absolutely
do it beforehand.
You actually just preempted the next question I was going to ask you, which was like, how can organizations avoid mistakes when trying to do something like this, and which is a very stressful situation. So it's planning, isn't it? It is all about planning.
Yeah, it is all about planning. You don't want to run an exercise where everything just runs perfectly. So during an exercise, you have what we call injects. So you have injects which will reflect the reality of whatever the main risk is for that organization. But the facilitators for exercising are, certainly for the NCSE scheme, they're really, really clever at delivering exercises in that they can read the room. Sometimes you get people who are not engaged and they'll know how to draw them out, and maybe you get people who are overbearing and they will know how to balance that. But the fundamental thing for me, I think, is to create a safe environment where it's okay to fail. So the thing that puts people off exercising is, I'm going to be found out. And it's not about that. It's about finding out where the problems are and how can we fix those as a team. So an exercise facilitator will create a safe environment to fail. So that you can draw out all those lessons learned and hopefully move the company forward.
Brilliant. That's really good. Some really good things here. I'm just making a couple of notes because I'm going to come back to those in a second. Okay, so let's say we've done the exercise now, and either it's run smoothly or it hasn't, like these injects have happened. How do you make sure that, because that we don't just do that cyber incident exercise activity and then everybody just goes back to their desk and returns to normal things. Oh dear, we didn't quite do that right. Let's hope for the best next time. How do businesses actually learn from it and actually improve? What's your advice on that?
That's a really good question. So when you deliver an exercise, when you have, you've designed this exercise, we're going to do this. When it actually goes down, it's really important to have somebody there who's just acting as a scribe. So I mean, you would do that. You should be doing that during an actual response anyway. You should have somebody there who is just acting as a scribe. We discovered this, therefore we did that. We did this, and then we did that. So consequence, actions, timescales, timelines. Really important. Remember, you've got your 72 hours for the ICO if you've lost personal data and things like that. So at what, when does the clock start ticking? So when you're doing your exercise, really important to have a scribe who's then recording all the things and the responses, what works and what doesn't work. So an assured service provider will, from the NCSC scheme, will automatically have one of those, and you end up fundamentally with a report at the end, which then sort of says, oh well, we observed this and we think we can improve this element of our response plan. So hopefully at the end of it, you get a report, you get an set of actions that people are going to take away and be accountable for, and put those improvements in, and then hopefully next time those problems are gone.
That's right. Yeah. The way you're describing it now, obviously we as an organization do a lot of penetration testing. It sounds like, treating it like that, because you wouldn't have a pen test and go, oh, well, we found some problems and then we'll just do another one next year and say, well, you're going to want a report. You're going to want an output. You're going to want actions that are followed up within SLAs, maybe even.
Yeah, and you can have SLAs for your exercise if you're that mature in your response planning.
Sure.
You can have, time to recovery, time to containment. You can record those kinds of things. Especially if you're mature enough to be doing live play and you're running, maybe you're running it through a ticket system and you through the logs and you're monitoring and picking things up, so you can put time to real, you can craft it down.
Okay, that's really good, really good. So let's say we're going to probably wrap up shortly, but if an SME wants to start today, they're saying, someone's listening to this and going, this is something we've been talking about, we haven't really executed on anything so far, but there's something coming up in the next 3 months where we can get the whole board and all the key people together. What would you highlight as being the sort of the next steps, and where can they get really good sort of trusted guidance and tools from?
Good question. There is some brilliant guidance and content for the NCSC on their website to begin with. First, step number one, who is going to respond? Who are your responders going to be? So you need to build what we call a CSIRT, Cybersecurity Incident Response Team. So who's going to be the team? Work out who the team is. NCSC have got guidance on what the composition of that team is. The next thing is you need to work out the plan. So maybe you start looking at your risk register. What are our biggest risks, and what would be the plan if platform A went down, or if this scenario went down. So you can then work out your plan.
On that point there, I think it's the first time we've probably mentioned it, but it's the risk register. It's that's almost an essential foundation to all of this, isn't it? Really, because if you don't know what your biggest risks are, or you haven't captured them, then this might be built on shaky ground.
And some of that might actually come back to your kind of asset register as well. Before that, what are our key assets, and what are the risks that are contained in those assets? You could have one platform which is containing critical personal data or personal information, and that's got to be asset number one, which is the most important thing. You do not want a data breach in that.
Of course.
And if you did, what will you do, and how will you contain that, etc., etc. So you build out your response plan based upon the business risk.
Yeah.
And thinking about supply chain as well, because that
Hmm.
supply chain could be a big part of that risk as well.
Absolutely.
Whether
Yeah.
they are a supplier to you, or they are a, or vice versa, you
Mm.
could as well.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah.
so build up that plan, then start, doing some exercises just by yourself. Just test it with the team. And then when you're ready, then look at the NCSE scheme, bring in an expert, because the thing that an expert will do is look at threat intelligence. They will
Hmm.
work out what's going on in the world today
Yes.
and how does that relate to this kind of organization.
Mm.
So um and for as me, many of those organizations, they're cyber essentials
Yeah.
certification bodies as well, so
Hmm.
they might
Yeah.
help you get through cyber essentials, put the basics
Yeah.
in place, um all those good things as well. Yeah.
That was really a really useful summary. So I've made a couple of notes, and I'm just going to come back to them as a roundup. But Jonathan, I'm going to invite you to kind of round this up as you sort of see fit. But it is about planning. It is about it being okay to fail. I noted that down because I thought that was a really important point to make. It isn't about making an cyber incident response plan run completely smoothly. That isn't the necessary objective, is it? And having that scribe, that's really important as well, isn't it? I made those few points. So yeah, I'll invite you to just kind of summarize and round up the key important parts of this.
Yeah, get your basics right.
Yeah.
Get cyber essentials, get all that good stuff in place,
Yeah.
but then be prepared, plan for the worst and be ready. And
Yeah.
that's kind of as much as anybody can do, isn't it? If you plan for the
It,
worst, get ready,
yes.
and then if you've done the basics right, hopefully you won't ever need it.
Yes. Yeah. A
Like
bit like a
our fire drill. Let's go
fire
back to our
drill. I was
fire
just gonna
drill.
say, yeah, exactly.
We
Yeah.
hopefully we never do it.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, brilliant. Honestly, Jonathan, it's been such an interesting topic. It's something that I know I didn't know a huge amount. And before we started talking about this subject for this podcast episode, and I found it really interesting because it is about actually working out what's going to happen in the real world and actually exercising the plan. So I've found it really useful. I hope you have as well.
Thank you so much for having me, Anish. It's
Yeah.
great opportunity. I'm such a nerd.
Well, this is what we want. This is what we want in the industry, and definitely on our podcast is people who are passionate and really interested in their subject. So thank you so much.
You're most welcome.